Okay, we are live. Perfect.
That's,
So I kind of just wanted to take this time to sort of do a bit of a Q&A with you, if that's okay.
I love Q&As. That makes me not have to prepare anything and think about stuff. I'm really good with Q&A because half the work is by the people that are watching the show. So that's cool.
Yeah. Good. So if you are here and in the chat, we've just building up a bit of audience now. As what I can see, there's 4 people in chat. That'll continuously go up in the next few seconds, I'm sure. If you have just joined, then chuck any questions you have for Wally in the chat, and both Wally and I will talk about it from both our experiences through it, and hopefully get you a good answer to your query about isopods, geckos, whatever it may be. God, goodness knows with all these lots. So yeah, fire all your questions in chat. So yeah, we're just gonna be hanging out for maybe half an hour, an hour. I don't know how long it'll be. We'll just do it and see where we end, if that makes sense. See where it goes. Just relax a wee bit for everyone. Just chill, find a comfy spot, and we'll just crack on with this stream. So yeah,
That
thank you so much for coming on, Wally. If you've not already checked out Supreme Gecko, go and check him out just now. I'm sure someone will put a link in chat if that'd be okay. Seriously, an idol for me. You really are a bit of an idol. Everything you do, your videos are so educational. I love it. I really do love it.
I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the sentiment. I've always said, find 3 people that can be your resource. I've said this over and over again. And I would just want to say real quick, hi, Frank the Tank. Great person. Joins me almost in every single chat that I'm in. So
Frank.
I don't want to be an idol. I want to be a resource, though. If I can provide information, be it right through all of my experience or be it wrong through all of my experience. Use that information and say, well, I'm not going to do it because Wally did it and he said that he really messed up on doing it. So I don't mind being a bad example if everybody can take it and do the right thing. So cheers to everybody. Ask your questions away. Happy anniversary, Wally. Thank you, Frank the Tank. 37 years with my wonderful wife. Thank you, Frank.
Wow. There you go.
You didn't even know I was 37 years old, did you?
Wow, no. Budget films, do you want to hear an isopod joke? Go for it. I want to hear your isopod joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Budget films is always there for a good joke. A very good joke. I'm sure throughout the live, then more jokes will be put in chat. So anyway, I just want to start from the start for any of our viewers who haven't really known. So what originally got you into isopods and geckos? Geckos, actually. Let's just start really from the start. What got you into reptiles in general?
Perfect. I'll go back to, and I'm going to try to condense this into 2 minutes instead of 2 hours.
Sorry.
I started as a kid fishing, so I fished all the time. That led me to keeping native fish in a fish tank, just to see their behaviors. So as I grew up and moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, got married 37 years ago, I started keeping tropical fish to breed them and to see babies and to prove that I was keeping them correctly. So my 1 tank became 2. My 2 tanks, actually the aquariums bred quicker than the fish. I had 4 tanks, and then I had 8 tanks, and then I had 10 tanks in this one room apartment. So we bought a house simply. I won't tell my wife this, so I hope she's not watching, but I bought a house so I could expand my fish room. So 10 tanks.
Really in it. It just keeps growing and growing.
It does. It's funny how fish tanks kind of take up the whole availability of whatever space you have in a house. So I went from 10 tanks to 125 aquariums, and again, this is when I was much younger. And then we had 3 kids, and I had to make that choice between career, tropical fish, and with 3 young boys, the family. So I knew family had to be one of those choices. and I loved what I was doing for my career. So unfortunately, the tropical fish kind of took a sidestep for a time being. I actually sold everything in one weekend. Got out of that, started raising orchids. Orchids was fun, and then I did this and I did that. I finally started keeping geckos because I had that need to see animals breeding and the whole husbandry thing. So geckos, one leopard gecko pair became 5 leopard gecko pairs plus 1 crested gecko pair, which became 50 crested gecko pairs and about 50 leopard gecko pairs and all kinds of other exotic geckos. So, I went about 20 years ago from just a pair of leopard geckos to now probably about 700 enclosures and well over 1,000 animals, and 50 enclosures of isopods. And I don't know if I can do this, but I'll try 20 different aquariums, small, but 20 different aquariums. So that's where I'm at right now.
That is very cool. That is very cool. We've got a joke in. What do you call a dead isopod? I have no idea.
None.
Check it in chat. What do you call a dead isopod? That is a very, very cool story. And I mean, it's kind of how we all start, isn't it? We find something cool and then it just keeps going and going and going and going and going. Oh. I don't know how you find all these jokes about all these random topics, but somehow he does. I've been friends with the guy who's behind budget films for all my life, really, and he's always there for a good joke.
Very cool.
But that's a really cool story. So, like, how many animals, like, how many separate species do you have right now? Do you know?
Yes, I do, because I just did a rundown about a month ago. I actually listed all the species that I have, and it sounds like that shouldn't be that big of a job, but I put them all down so that I could start looking at every single one of them to make sure that I was caring for each one according to how they should be cared for.
Yep.
And I'm an Excel guy. I like to use Excel worksheets and Google Sheets. Right. So I'm putting all that information in for every single species. So I think I was at 52 individual species of geckos. So that doesn't include, that I have, again, probably over 60 pair of crested geckos and 20 pair of gargoyles and lots of other, single species, but lots of those species. Like I probably have 20 or 30 tanks of Periodora picta. So some of these species I have multiple tanks of, but about 50 different species of geckos.
That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. We've got another joke. No idea. Again, put it in chat. Fantasy Geckos has a question. I'm guessing you have Chihuahuas.
I don't. Great question. What a good question.
No.
I do not have Chihuahuas. I do not have Lychees. I do not have Serosinorum. I don't have Trackies, obviously. I don't think that many people do. I don't have Chihuahuas, because I had them at one time, and I'd actually gotten out of the hobby about 3 or 4 years ago for about 2 years. And when I got back in, I said, okay, I'm going to keep the animals that I really, really, really love. And I like Chihuahuas, but crested geckos are so close to them that I wanted to focus on crested geckos and some of the morphs that I'm working with instead of trying to keep everything under the sun. So unfortunately, Chihuahuas kind of went to the side for me. I think I had at one point 4 or 5 different pairs of Chihuahuas and was breeding, the white shoulders and some really nice reds. I just went a different direction. Love them though. Really cool animal.
Yeah, I've taken my Cresty out. I've only got one future breeding plan. He's a stunner too. He's really nice.
Beautiful animal.
Yeah, so he's definitely going to be a future breeding plan. What has 6 eyes and can't see? Is it the word invisibility? Oh.
Ooh.
That's good.
If that's the answer, that's well done.
There you go. Yes. So he's a breeding project, but I'm guessing, is it every species that you keep, do you plan to breed at some point?
Yes.
Everything.
So everything that I keep, I try to breed. Now I have probably 4 or 5 animals that I'm holding on to because at some point I had a pair, or at some point I got the animal hoping that I would have a pair, but can't. There's a few animals in my collection that are kind of rare, and I can't find another individual for it to then go ahead and breed it. So I hold on to them in the hopes that someday I'll find a mate for the animal, knowing that maybe I probably won't. But every single animal that we bring in here, ultimately, the challenge is to breed the animal, because in my mind, like I said earlier, in my mind, if I can breed it, that means that I'm probably taking the best care that I possibly can for the animal. That's not necessarily true with all animals. You can breed leopard geckos and not have 100% healthy animals. But in my mind, if I do the breeding part and I get babies, that's kind of that full cycle of seeing life, start, again. So that's my ultimate goal.
That is really nice. So I'm guessing the first animals that you paired up were leopard geckos.
They were, and I haven't thought of this for probably 15 years, but my first leopard geckos were Samson and Delilah, and they bred, within. I think that they were breeding, in the deli cups on the way home. When purchasing them, they were just, how leopard geckos are. They breed very, very easily. So once I got my first eggs and first baby leopard geckos, I said to myself, I am a gecko god, and I can do anything with geckos. And, little did I know at that time that the gecko world is a complex thing of nature. And even though you can breed leopard geckos and crested geckos and some other, types of geckos, doesn't mean that you know everything. And in fact, it really doesn't. And I feel right now, even with some of the species that I'm bringing into the facility, I feel like a new person in this hobby, because there's still so much. 20 years, I've had well over 100 different species, but I still feel like I'm learning something every single day that I keep animals.
That is really cool. And I suppose everyone does. And all the species they keep, whether it be a reptile, a gecko, tarantulas, whatever, or like a common dog. Everyone's always learning with the animals that they keep. And that's kind of something that I just adore about the hobby. I learn so much about my animals every single day that I wake up, and I go and take care of them. I feeding them. A few nights during the holidays, I just camped out. I set up station and I just sat in this room all night and watched all the nocturnals come out, how they behaved in their enclosures at night, because they're obviously nocturnals. That would obviously let me suss out if they wanted more room, if what they were looking for, if they were looking for food, where their favorite spots were. And I understood my collection so much through that. But even to the smallest bit, you wake up and you find that there's a tarantula on the wall of its enclosure. There's so much you can learn just from observing them. It's just crazy.
I think you're absolutely right. And those people that feel like they know everything about crested geckos because they've had them for 3 or 4 years and they've bred them, have a world of knowledge to gain by, like you said, watching the animals. Watch the animals during the day. Watch the animals at nighttime. Watch them together when you put them together for breeding purposes. If you keep them together, watch the animals and how they behave. If you have multiple animals in the enclosure, watch for one to be maybe bullied. There's so many behavioral things that you should be watching from your animals. That and the fact that you should be talking to people. Talk to people of like interests so that you can gain even more. Share your experiences. 99% of the hobby does it one way, and you might be doing it differently and having success in that method. Share that experiences, because in your environment, you might be doing something different that other people might not be doing or can't be doing, and you can share that information.
Indeed, absolutely. And that is seriously one of the main reasons I keep all my animals. Is there's so much to learn over the time with them. So yeah, I was wondering if I would be able to show you a new isopod species that I got
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and I know this is like the dairy, probably like as common as dairy cows to you, but like I still love them. So first up, we've got some Armadillidium uh, Kluggies. No, Montenegro Kluggies.
Yep.
So they're pretty cool. But I actually got my first ever. I won them in a giveaway. I won some Cubaris Marina. So my
Nice.
first ever Cubaris. I know, and I know a few. You might remember a few months ago. I actually messaged you asking if you've got any tips for keeping Cubaris, and you said you're not really a Cubaris person. You know so much more about other species, but how would you rate the Cubaris genus on a scale of 1 to 10, and how much do you keep? I know you did a video quite recently, really quite recently, about these. So, do you keep very many?
I don't keep very well. It's all relative, right? You know, I might I think I have 6 or 7 different species of Cubaris. So for somebody that's keeping Cubaris murina, that might be a lot. I'm kind of looking around my camera to see the isopod here, but for somebody that keeps one Cubaris, 7 might be a lot. For somebody that keeps all the different color varieties of Cubaris, 7 isn't really a lot because there's many varieties. So my experience with Cubaris, I have Murina and Borneo just all over the place, just breeding like crazy. My rubber duckies are breeding. They're doing good, but they're not doing as good as I would really like them to do. My Panda Kings are going crazy. They're breeding very well. My Pak Chung is doing well. They're breeding, but like the rubber duckies are just a little bit slower. So my hopes and expectations with some of these Cubaris are probably here, and my actual numbers that I'm getting are probably like down here. So when I say I'm not doing well with the Cubaris, it's in my perspective and my understanding of where I'd really like to be with these animals.
Well, with me, that is quite a lot to me. Obviously, I'm still a minor. I don't have a proper job, not full income. I literally have maybe, I don't know, £200 or so to spend on new animals every year, unless I'm like really struggling and like really like I'm obviously starting now as I'm getting older to start sort of a side hustle. Just starting to build up income streams through YouTube of starting. So obviously as I'm growing older now, but my collection still is really quite small. I live in a family home. I've got my bedroom as all the space I can keep. So like for you to say you've got like hundreds of animals or hundreds of even just geckos is like crazy. I've got one crested gecko, a couple wall geckos. I've got 2 chameleons, and this is quite a lot to me. When I speak to you, for example, and you've got such a big collection, it's like it's crazy. So I just say it's all to do with perspective of which end of the scale you're coming from.
I couldn't agree more, and I don't want to make it at all sound like, I have so much experience in so many animals and everybody should listen to what I'm saying. What I'm trying to point out is that, this is what I do. This is, I do YouTube videos, I do geckos and tropical fish now. I talk to people like this. This is my job. I retired 3 years ago. A little bit early, and I just love what I'm doing today. But I can spend 80 hours a week in doing what I really, really love to do. I wish I would have taken that direction 30 or 40 years ago, but we all have to fit in what we can fit in with families and other responsibilities.
That is that's such a dream job.
It really is, and again, I want to emphasize, I spend so many hours a day on this social media and the animals, but it's all, I'm my own boss. So if I get mad at somebody in my work environment, I'm getting mad at myself. So.
Yeah, that is really cool. I just wanted to catch up with chat. Hello, Harry. Hello. I don't know how to pronounce your name. DJRGEN. Sorry. I like the feeder maintenance vids from Wally. They're full of nice info. I could not agree more, as Wally was saying. His videos are so informative. Hello, Tron Cat. Troncat asks, what's your least favorite gecko species? For me, it's got to be Murnings.
Oh, that's mornings. That's interesting because a lot of people really like morning geckos, and a few people don't like them that much because they're not out that much. You would think morning geckos would be out all the time. They're parthenogenic, which means that, as you know, you only need one to breed. I've taken 30 tanks and just filled them with morning geckos, and I'm getting eggs and babies. I think the problem with morning geckos is that they're not out enough, but I think that you really have to crowd that enclosure with as many hiding places as you possibly can so that they have lots of places and they feel comfortable. The more that you feel like you're not going to be able to see them, the more that you will see them. From my perspective, my least favorite animal, a gecko, would probably be the tokays. I've struggled with tokays. I'm taking a different direction with my tokays. I've purchased wild a couple of times and not had success with the tokay geckos because they're coming in wild and they're full of disease. And I've had tokays a week and they all die. So you really have to be prepared for that and really have to work well with them. Another gecko that is starting to go down on my list of favorite geckos is probably cat geckos. I love how cat geckos look and they act and everything about them. They're difficult to breed, but they're also, for me, and I need to, everybody needs to recognize what they can work well with and what they struggle with. Cat geckos have been a struggle for me. And they're kind of slowly going down on my scale of favorite geckos.
That's fair. I've never really kept cat geckos. I went to a reptile show not too long ago and I didn't see any there. I think they're really quite rare in the UK. I saw some knobtail geckos at the show. And I know that they are exceptionally cheap compared to ours over in Europe. It's like us and Chihuahua geckos. For a Chihuahua gecko here, you might pay £150. For a Chihuahua gecko over at you, you're looking at least 1,000. Am I right, or near abouts?
It's right around there, unless you know somebody, unless you've worked with somebody. But yeah, Chihuahuas have skyrocketed in price here because I think that more people are getting into the hobby, especially with this last year and a half. And I think the Chihuahua prices have really gone up.
Yeah. And I saw the knobtail geckos that have clearly just gone through the roof here as well. I think there were 2 of them there, and I think they're about 6K each.
6,000. Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I might be wrong in my numbers, but I'm almost certain it was around 6,000. The only 2 in the show.
Wow.
In the first half an hour, because clearly people out looking for them. It was crazy.
I recently picked up 2 different species. I picked up Nephurus levis, and I have a male and 2 females, and the females are just tanks. They're just huge. And I'm actually concerned because my male doesn't seem like he might be able to work with the females. They're just so huge. So yes. I have levis. I'll probably wait until next year to breed them. And I have Nephurus or Underwoodosaurus melii. And I have 2 of those pairs, and I just love the melii. They're just so gentle, and the big eyes, they're so cute, and the babies are just adorable. So
that's the species I saw at the show.
What's that?
That's the species I saw at the show.
Really? Those are really cool. And you said 6,000?
6,000.
Oh my gosh, that's staggering.
It's crazy.
I think I paid. Sure, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That was seriously, that was cheap.
Oh, I think I paid around $400 for each of my pairs. So about I don't, it was $700 or $800 for the 2 pair. US dollars, yeah.
I am very jealous of that. Frank the Tank says, I love how the UK has so many types of feeders that the US doesn't. I don't really know, because you're not allowed locusts, are you?
No, we don't and can't do locusts here at all. Grasshoppers, Hardly anyone here in the States breeds and raises grasshoppers. And I'm not sure why. It seems like that would be a good food item. Over here, most everything is crickets or mealworms.
Can you get like superworms?
You can absolutely can get superworms, and more breeders are taking on dubia roaches as breeders. We have 8 or 10 different containers of dubia roaches to feed the geckos. So they're gaining more popularity. The other roaches are gaining more popularity, but for the most part, 90% of the food items here, the feeder insects, will be either crickets or mealworms, and maybe a dab of superworms in there as well.
That is really sad. And I'm assuming that they'll probably be quite expensive, the superworms, at least because they're not as, like, in the UK, superworms are, like, really common practice. Superworms, you know the good-sized pots of superworms that you can get them for, like, £1.
Nice.
For a good, like, 50 to 100 of them. And they're very readily available. We've also, although you guys have got hornworms, hornworms completely illegal here. Like, it's the same with locusts with you. Hornworms, we are not allowed them at all. Like, highly illegal.
Probably from an agricultural standpoint, they just don't want the invasive species getting out there. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm assuming it'll probably be the same for you guys and locusts, as they will probably end up establishing. It's a bit like the Burmese python problem in the Everglades, I'm assuming, will probably, which is why that law's in place, which is completely understandable. But it's not really a thing that's come into my mind, is the sort of variability of life foods we've got. We've got dubia roaches, superworms, hissing roaches. Hissing roaches are really quite common here. We got silkworms, we got waxworms, mealworms, calcium worms like black soldier fly, black soldier.
Yep.
We've got earthworms, sun beetle grubs. The list goes on and on and on and on. And we're buffalo beetles, buffalo worms. Yeah, we've actually got a really big selection, and I didn't realize the US was so short for that.
So we have many of those different species. Excuse me. Another feeder insect that I'm working with are peanut beetles. They're a little bit like the buffalo beetles, but the larvae of peanut beetles are like a small, chubby micro mealworm, and I think more nutritious to the animal. So I'm working a lot with the peanut beetles. Easy to breed. They don't really take any maintenance whatsoever. So because I have a lot of small geckos. You mentioned the Chihuahuas, and maybe that's a factor that kind of steered me away a little bit from the Chihuahuas, is the size. I like a lot of small animals, so the peanut beetles for me are just a godsend as far as having a small food item that's easy to feed.
That is very cool. I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
Animal that I don't think you have. I might be mistaken. I might be like messing out on this completely, but I'm pretty sure you don't have this. I'll be 2 minutes. He's like right here, just off camera. Here. When are you going to get yourself a chameleon?
Oh gosh, that's a whole nother can of worms. So I mentioned earlier that I transitioned from fish to orchids to a lot of other collectible items, and got into the reptiles. And I talked about the 2 leopard geckos. Well, the reptile collection didn't start with leopard geckos for me. It started with veiled chameleons, which immediately jumped to the panther chameleons.
Yes.
So I had a location called Tamatov, which are the bright red ones, and I was breeding them for about 3 years. And the sales here, the cost of a panther is still pretty high, and especially the Tamatovs, with them being just fire engine red all the time.
What about?
What's that?
Whereabouts is price points for panthers in the US?
Well, I could easily sell the babies for $150 to $200 a piece when I was breeding them about 18 years ago. 20 years ago. So I worked with the Panthers for a while, and the Vales and Jacksons. Didn't get into many of the some pygmy chameleons too. But I got out of the chameleon simply because I felt like the females were breeding for a season and then dying. A lot of the females, and especially 20 years ago, you had to have the right circumstances. The light bulbs weren't as really good as they are right now. So our chameleons would breed, for a season and a half, and then unfortunately, and then call it. So I got out of that because I felt like it was more of a factory, a chameleon factory, and I really didn't feel comfortable with that. And that's fine, if you can do chameleons. It just wasn't for us. And by that time, the leopard geckos and the crested geckos were going crazy. So,
see, I've kind of come into hobby in the UK at least, where panthers are actually starting to take off a good bit more. And now that we've got a far better understanding of them, like my local reptile shop, I've developed such a good relationship with them and made some really good pals through them. And they breed, they're very big into panther chameleons. These two actually came from them. And they've got females in that shop that have bred for like 8 seasons in a row now.
Nice. Very nice.
Because they've managed to crack the code, if that makes sense. And here I am, like quizzing them, like, right, tell me all your secrets, And as soon as they have, and now I've got proper understanding, I jumped immediately into them. Like, I am breeding panther chameleons, I have to. And I've got a pair. I've gone through 3. My female passed away young. It was her first clutch, and she had an egg pop inside of her. So that's just chameleon, so that fragile. So that was a bit of a freak accident. She was provided with an egg box and everything. She got pretty much all of it out, and just the last hurdle, she seemed to have popped an egg, and it had basically molded inside of her. And obviously, chameleons, you take them to the vet and they're dead by the journey of stress. You can't do anything about it. And you certainly can't, once you get to the vet, you can't open them up and flush them out or anything. So she was gone within about 24 hours after that. But my other 2, they're doing just great. And yeah, hopefully we'll have babies next year from both of them, which is really quite cool. But yeah, we're working really hard on a red bar ambelobe line of chameleons. So it's my main project right now, as opposed to geckos. But you should try get back into maybe 1 or 2 even.
I should get back into a lot of stuff, but I can't because I'm just. And it's not for a lack of room. I could make the room. It's for a lack of time. I'm just so committed to so much other stuff. But I tell you what, hats off to you. Those are beautiful, beautiful animals. And if I could, probably the first animal that I would have, if I could make some room and some time, would be a panther chameleon. They're just unbelievably beautiful. And their behavior, everything about them. So congratulations.
Thank you. But, as I was mentioning, I obviously don't have the room to have hundreds of, like, crested and leopard geckos. So I'm kind of dipping my foot into not too advanced, but reptiles that need a good bit more attention, that are slightly more sought after, instead of working on lots of commons. I'm working on a very reduced and very low amount of a bit more rarer species, just because I can, really, just because I can. But this is my entire life, is just reptiles. I wake up and just do reptiles. I come in from school. I leave school for lunch times, and I come racing home and do the reptiles, and then late back into class. Oh, sorry, I was handling chameleons, and my jeweled Lacerta was needing fed. It's just all these things. It's just my thing. But yeah, that's basically what I've been doing, is going into the slightly more advanced things, expanding my horizons, really, getting as much experience as I can in whilst I'm young and able to do it for this long and put so much attention into it.
Well, you certainly have the passion. Watching a few of your videos, it certainly is apparent that you have the passion. So again, hats off. You're doing a great job out there.
Thank you very much. I certainly try my best. Hello, Urban Exotics UK. Troncat Desmond, best chameleon. Yeah, Desmond is my guy. We've got Desmond and Tallulah. Don't ask me why. Other people named them. But yeah, hi, Anton. Hi, Toby. Hello, Lewis. So yeah, pretty much. Have you got any like upcoming sort of major projects that are happening, or are you just happy on what you've got just now? Is there anything major that you've not told anyone about yet? Is there any secrets lying behind?
Never any secrets lying behind it. Never. Excuse me. I have two animals coming in this weekend. One is they're called elox. They have real curly tails, and their babies have black and white tail. They're just a really incredible animal. The other is a Periodora rangi, and they like to dig. So you open their enclosure and you see sand. That's all you see, sand.
Wow, okay.
And then you start feeding, and all of a sudden, up pops a head and looks around and runs over to the food and grabs the food and then runs back into the sand. So I'm kind of excited about them because those are two species. I always have my want list. You asked if I was happy to get some animals. Those would be two animals that I've been looking for about a year and a half, and some finally became available. Yes. After that, I think that's going to pretty much do it, until I open, Facebook and see the next post on a weird looking gecko that I've not seen before.
So you walk into a pet shop and get given another different type of exotic animal, and that's your thing now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Most of my purchases, though, are from just a handful of people. I probably purchase from 3 people. And that, because, I've had a lot of other animals, and what I'm looking for now is pretty specific. I saw a question earlier about what my top of my wish list would be. If I could pick an animal that I really, really would want to keep, it would be Periodora misobi. Another type of gecko that I would really, really like to have at some point would be the New Zealand geckos, the green ones. Those would be really super fun to have. Other than that, I have a couple of animals that I would be interested in having, but those are probably, at the top of my wish list at this point.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Phil. Yeah, that is. I suppose, are you just getting a bit more like really specialized now into some really rare and nice animals?
I really am. I'm trying to keep some animals that will challenge me as far as, trying to understand them as best as I can. I have, a few animals right now that have some real specific requirements. They're in the desert, but it gets cold in the desert at night, and it certainly gets cold in wintertime. So trying to manage that, desert temperature and then sudden drop at night of 20 degrees, trying to manage things like that is a challenge to me, but it's something that I want to, take head on and try to work with the animals and ultimately, obviously, to breed them.
Very nice, very nice. I actually have another question for you. And as a very, very young person in the hobby, a good few years ago, I went into a reptile shop and I picked up my first ever, if it'll come out, I picked up a praying mantis.
Nice.
Not a mantis that I picked up, but I fell in love with them, and I started keeping a lot of them. It was a bit like you and your geckos. All of a sudden, my parents would just be almost notified, oh, by the way, we've got 5 more mantis in my room. They would just turn up. And I'm wondering, have you ever dipped your foot into praying mantis?
I have, and I have mixed emotions with them. Number one, they're so very cool, but on the other hand, they take a lot of work, and they also, like tarantulas, I've always known that I would never have tarantulas because I would always worry about the female breeding with the male. I would always worry about that. It's the same with mantises, as you know. Introducing a male with a female isn't guaranteed, lovey-dovey, and then all kinds of little baby mantises. Sometimes the female turns on the male, and it's not a pretty scene. So,
yes.
I don't know if you've tried breeding yet, your mantises.
I have.
Have you? How has it worked?
It was one night that I literally had to stay up for the entire night, sitting watching them. I was very sleep deprived in the morning and I actually fell asleep halfway through it. And I woke up. So I'd had this set up, this really tall structure with the mantis on top, lots of space, and very easy for the male to hop off and like fly down and get a good bit of ground away from the female. Because obviously the female's big and bulky, so if she lets go, then she'll end up hurting herself. If he lets go, he can glide down and get to safety. So I had this good setup, sitting on my bed, watching them for the entire night, just staring at them, like a kid playing his like games console. I was just staring at these guys, and I experienced a lock, and I'm like, okay, phew, they've locked up. At least if the male gets eaten, I am hopefully getting a fertile egg sac. That's fine. I'm getting a fertile Luthica. That's okay. So I sat back and kind of relaxed. My fault. I then fell asleep. I woke up and looked over, and the female was in the exact same position, and the male was nowhere to be found at all. Nowhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's been eaten. This guy's been eaten. And I was looking around, I'm like, I can't find him. So I run, and maybe, I don't know, it was a good few years ago, so I was really quite young. And I came running through to my parents and went, oh my gosh, I think one of my animals has just been eaten. And they went, no way, let me come and help try and find him. Opened up, couldn't find him anywhere. It was just about to go to sleep, switched the light off, and this mantis comes flying off the roof and pretty much lands on my chest as I'm lying down in bed. Turns out he's hiding upside down on the ceiling for like 2 hours straight, and during the night. And Mum switched off the light, and he landed right on my chest as I was about to fall asleep. I'm like, you are alive, yeah! And yeah, he passed away maybe a couple months after that. My female provided me 2 egg sacs. Unfortunately, I only got a few mantis off of that. I don't know, they might well have been related, and the seller was maybe a bit dodgy, I don't know. But still, it was a very good experience, and I did actually end up making a bit of a profit. I got really just a couple babies compared to the 200 to 400 you can usually get out of a sack. So yeah, I got a couple, and it was a really good experience. I learned quite a lot, and then continued to get like 19 more mantis the following week, because why not? And just they all started to pass away, and I just didn't get back into them. Well, I mean, it's fairly expensive when you actually map it out. A mantis is going to live maybe 8 months if it's a male. If you're good at it. I mean, I had a male that lived for 2 years, which is really unheard of. But I had a male who lived for 2 years. But I also have had males who's gone from baby as I purchased them to adult, lived out a good life, and gone at 6 months. And you're paying actually quite a bit for one mantis. So there was a time where I had a lot of mantis, and as they started passing away, I just didn't get back into them. I was focusing now on chameleons, and yeah, it just started expanding. But I've got another pair, and I'm just going to keep going now, I think. Back in mantis, it's like you and your geckos, just keep piling them up. Again, and my friend is, yeah.
Congratulations on breeding them. That's an accomplishment. I do have a question though. How did the male get on the ceiling?
So we sussed it out that he must have managed, because the next day I like sat down after school, I was burst, and I just thought out of a way. Turns out, right, I had some blinds that were due to be put up in my room, or in someone else's room, leaning against the wall, and he must have managed to get traction on that fabric, climbed up, hopped onto mesh, it was on an enclosure, went right up, caught to the wall, and we've got a funny texture on our wall, on our ceiling, sorry, and he must have been able to grab on, and he just hid in the corner for the entire night, and then glided down and landed on me. So he managed to just use whatever he could find in front of him and managed to get traction, basically climbed up the wall in the dark, which was pretty impressive for a little mantis. So yeah, he managed to climb right up the wall.
Unbelievable.
If I hadn't gone to get my parents, if I'd just gone back to bed, I probably wouldn't have found him again. He probably would have ended up falling off and going under my bed or something and passing away rather quickly because he didn't have any food. But yeah, both survived, and I managed to breed them. Aged, I think I was like 11 or 12, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got babies. I've managed to get 2 animals and get more animals from them. And as a child, I was like absolutely crazy, like so happy that I'd finally managed to do this. Right now, I've only got a pair right now.
Okay.
I've got Sphodromantis linoleus, which is the African lined mantis. A really big, bulky species, and actually the only species that's managed to really badly hurt me. I had a female who grabbed onto me and just held onto my finger and started eating away at my finger. But she had an egg sac in her at the same time, so I didn't want to flick her because that would obviously really damage the egg sac, if not hurt her, because her abdomen was so big it could just fall off at one little flick. So I basically had to just sit there and try and work her off, and sure enough, we got an egg sac off of her, to the absolute hellish response of my finger's death. And that, yeah, so naturally I decided to get that species. So yeah, I've got that, but I used to keep budwing mantis, giant Asian mantis. That was the species that ended up breeding for me and ended up on the ceiling, was giant Asian. Giant rainforest. I had a giant rainforest male. I used to come in from school, drop my bag, run up, open up the enclosure. He would run up my arm, hold on my shoulder. I would then walk down the street for a couple hours with my pals. He would still be chilling on my shoulder. I would come back, extend my arm out back to the enclosure. He would walk down it straight back into his enclosure, and he would. The list goes on. Orchid mantis, a few flower mantis, dead leaf mantis, whatever you can come up with is what I had. And I'm really starting to focus on getting some more species that I should have had. It made sense for me to logically have, which I didn't have. So I started off with line mantis, and I'll start moving into maybe some of the shield mantis, a bit rarer things, as you're doing with your animals. You're getting into more rarer things. So am I, as I'm saying. Try get some more of them in the hobby, which is really cool.
It's very cool, and those are a very unique animal. I know that there's a couple of other sites, especially in the UK, of people that are doing mantises, and I really enjoy those videos. So yeah. You need to do more. You need to do more videos on mantises.
So, all right. Well, there's certainly more to be learned of them. They're a lot of work to breed, though. Obviously, you've got to have each individual cup.
Yes.
Like, for each of them, I've got a cup right here. This was literally the size of cups that I used to have. I used to have all of these for each baby mantis. And obviously then you've got your lid and mesh, and you've got to put the mesh on, and then you've got to cut a hole in the lid, put the lid on, and then you've basically got a sealed area. So yeah, there's a lid. There's actually a baby milk frog in here. Look here. Anyway, it was these lid on, but mesh in between so they can hang upside down and molt. It was just so much stress. And then every 2 days you had to go around and mist them all and put in fruit flies and keep up in cultures. So sure enough, that kept me busy. I still don't own a games console to this day because I'm just, doing all of this full time as a minor, which is pretty cool. But that's all I used to do.
I don't have a game console either, so
no. Don't need it. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but so rewarding in the end, and you can, as I say, you can make quite a bit of money from it, and a lot of experience. Oh, actually, here, this is my setup. This is what I used to do. This has got some stick insect eggs. So I used to have paper towel on the bottom, and then I would cut a hole in the lid, and then get some mesh, and you put the mesh on top, and then you would seal it with the lid with a hole cut in it, and I had to go around and cut out all of these individual containers and everything, and basically that's what I did. That's how I kept all the babies.
I did virtually the same thing with mine. I had 3 animals, but it's a lot of work. I was feeding every single day. I tell you what, they love the peanut beetle larvae, but every single day, and then once a week cleaning. It took a lot of work, and it was fine because I had some time in the morning to eat breakfast and take care of those and then get into my day-to-day. But after a while, after you're doing that every single day, it just becomes a lot. So while I enjoyed keeping mantises, it's just I would have to, again, like anything else, I would have to release something. I'd have to not work on something to bring in mantis to work on. It's for us, for me, it's not a space thing. It's more of a time, and my time's just so limited. And yours is too.
Just finding things that work for you. Mantis worked for me. Mantis didn't work for you. You know what I mean? It's just everything. Having tons of geckos doesn't work for me. It works really well for you.
Yep.
Isn't it? It's just working out what's best for you.
Exactly.
And I think, as I say, it just comes back to the always learning thing. You're always learning what's best for you and what's, what thing you got to kind of start moving out of and what things you got to start coming into. And you really start to develop quite a story, actually, through all your collecting and experience of all the years that will build up of you keeping reptiles and inverts, or any hobby for that matter, your growth. So I'm actually starting to write a lot of diaries down, keeping track of the animals I have quite often, so that when I'm, old and grey, and I'm, in my deathbed, I can look back and go, oh, I used to do all of this, and when I've learned so much, I can look back and go, oh my word, my collection was so small, and now to me right now it seems so big, all through this perspective thing. So yeah, I've not actually gone into spreadsheets yet. I know how much you love your spreadsheets. I've not actually gone into spreadsheets yet. But yeah, I've started making diaries and things to try and track my progress. Is that something you ever used to do? Is keep diaries of what you had apart from spreadsheets?
No, I kept everything in a spreadsheet. So I kept all of the breeding. I still keep spreadsheets with breeding information so that I can track back lineage. I keep spreadsheets on animals that I've purchased, things like that. I don't really keep track of all the mating, all the breeding. I have notes that I pass around, this male's going to this female and so on the tanks. And then at the end of the season, those notes usually get thrown away, but the breeding results are then put into spreadsheets, and I keep that for forever. So what I found is, for me, what works is spreadsheets to keep track of all of the animals and everything. But I think, you're doing the YouTube videos. So that, in a sense, can be, your vlog of all that you're doing. And I think that would work really, really well, especially with some of the things that you're doing and how you're doing it. I think that it's kind of entertaining for people to see all of that. So at any point, you could go back to, a year ago or 2 years ago and see the activity that you've had with some of your animals.
Yeah. Even just looking back a couple months, it's such a change.
Yeah.
And it's really great to see how it goes. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to sort of start wrapping up this stream because today I've been off of school with a terrible migraine.
Oh, no.
I've got a bright light in my eye and it's not doing great.
Sure.
I was really close to having to cancel, but I just, filled myself with medicine, stood myself up and said, right, let's do this. And still got content out to you. I started doing a schedule. I do every Tuesdays and Fridays uploading. Missed yesterday, so I had to get it out today. I had to get some kind of media. But thank you so much for coming on. Sorry having to stop at such short notice, but we'll try to get back. That's all right.
I completely understand, and it's been my pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Again, you had asked me, I jumped over to your channel. I saw your videos. I was really impressed. Then I saw your subscriber number and your views. Wow. Way to go. Hats off to you. You're doing it the right way.
Unfortunately, the views now aren't as consistent. But yeah, the full spike from back then, I'm kind of just riding the wave, attempting to ride the wave at least. And yeah, I'm trying to improve every day. But anywho, thank you so much for coming on, Wally. I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you, everyone who joined us in chat. I really hope you learned as much as I did from this stream. Yeah, I will see you all on Friday. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Toby. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.